I want you to read and think carefully about this section, the Reformation and the arts. When the Protestant Reformation bursts into history in 1517, it shatters the existing religious and political order, and the consequences reverberate for centuries up to our time. So notice how the textbook authors start. In spite of the dissident movements and heresies that had challenged the Roman Catholic Church through the centuries, its authority and that of the Pope always prevailed until the 16th century. They want you to understand that the Catholic Church had been the sole authority on Christianity for 1,000 years. Way back in the 300s and 500s, we saw alternate ideas such as Arianism, but they were extinguished. For 1,000 years, every Christian in Europe was a Catholic. No competing religious institutions. In fact, take a moment, look up the word Catholic. Let me show you. When it's used with a capital C, it means the Catholic Church, but with a lowercase c, it's an adjective that means including a wide variety of things, all embracing. So the term Catholic, that's used to identify the Catholic Church means the church of everyone. Everyone belongs to this church. This means that the Protestant Reformation for the first time is saying, no, not everyone will belong to this church. And this huge change happens because there has been a buildup of dissatisfaction. Then, against a backdrop of broad dissatisfaction with financial abuses and decadent lifestyles among the clergy, religious reformers from within the church itself challenged first its practices and then its beliefs. Issues of corruption, we saw it with Sixtus IV, beginning the Sistine Chapel decorations. He was notorious for practicing nepotism, to appointing his nephews, his relatives, to positions of massive power in order to control widespread institutions and gain political power. Particularly offensive to many people was the selling of indulgences. You pay to get free of the consequence of your sins. Pope Julius II did this on a big scale, and it was one of the ways he paid for the Sistine ceiling. And so this growing dissatisfaction reaches a crescendo under two major reformers. As they say, early 16th century reformers who were themselves Catholic priests and trained theologians. So this is a revolution from the inside. Desiderius Erasmus in Holland was working to reform the church, but Martin Luther goes further. Very famously, he breaks with the church. Indeed, many locate the beginning of the Reformation in 1517, when Luther issued his 95 Theses calling for church reform. 95 reasons why the Catholic Church, in his eyes, had sold out its religious authority. And these included the selling of indulgences, but also excessive veneration of saints and their relics. So in addition to papal corruption, Luther is questioning this whole tradition we've been studying, where saints and relics are thought to be ways you connect with God, and he's calling them superstitious. So he's also getting people to think about Christian religion in a new way. Important point here, Luther and others emphasized individual faith and regarded the Bible as the ultimate religious authority. So they're saying the Pope is not the authority. It is the Bible itself, the Bible that you read and learn from. This is definitely related to the fact that the culture of the printing press has allowed people to have their own Bible, to read it closely, intimately, privately, and it is changing how people think about their relationship to God, to salvation. This wonderful painting by the great artist Albrecht Dürer depicts the four major apostles, and it actually reveals many important things about Protestantism, right? It's painted in 1525 after the 1517 95 Theses of Martin Luther. And we have St. Peter tucked in the back here, kind of almost in the shadows. St. Peter, who is, according to the Catholic Church, the first pope who received the authority to lead Christianity directly from Jesus with this key. Well, here, the Protestant view in this painting is that Peter is actually in the back. Martin Luther's favorite apostle was John, shown in the front. But most important, more important than the key, more important than any of the identities of these artists, these apostles, are the Bibles that they hold, that they're consulting the Bible. So this artwork is declaring that the Bible itself, the reading of a Bible, is the ultimate religious authority, not this church founded in ancient Rome. So it's very interesting because it tells us of a religious culture of the book, where this is the source of religious experience, not images, rituals, and objects, which have been so important in Catholicism. And one of the things that happens with the Protestant Reformation is that there are actual outbreaks of iconoclasm, the destruction of images. That's how far the rejection of image culture goes. This is not true of all areas of the North. This doesn't happen everywhere. But if we look at the map, one of the things it's telling you is that Protestantism branches off into multiple different sects, schools of thought. So Lutheranism, obviously named after Luther, is one mainstream view, which does not actually, Luther does not promote the breaking of images, the destruction of images. Then Anglicanism is the Protestantism that is associated with England. Calvinism is very strict, very stark. It's associated with actually the Puritans that we all learned about coming to America with their Puritan ethos. And they are this kind of purple color. They are in certain specific areas such as Switzerland that do have strong outbreaks of the people literally tearing the artworks off the walls of churches, throwing them onto bonfires. In some cases, there are actually stories of people peeing and pooping on the artworks just to kind of make the point how much they loathe this image culture. And they will create a very strict and solemn vision of Christianity. So this brings us to the point that this has massive consequences for artists and art. If you've been making your living as an artist, creating altarpieces, this is now in question, and many regions are going to start to reject having altarpieces, will not be buying them. So for some artists in these countries who remain Catholic, they will be somewhat persecuted. There will even be a famous artist in the 1600s, Vermeer, who will have to sort of be somewhat very private about his Catholicism. But this also means that artists are going to turn to other ways of making a living and create other forms of art. Portraiture, secular subjects, including moralizing depictions of human folly and weaknesses, still lifes, and landscapes. There will actually be an interesting flowering of secular art that expresses cultural values in new ways. And these are going to be related to a growing art market for these secular subjects. It's centered in Antwerp, but will expand. And this will be the beginnings of a modern culture of art.